Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here, welcome back to the Railway and welcome to another review. Up today it is a pre-grouping tender loco from Bachmann. Today's locomotive has become a bit of a rarity. It was first introduced by Bachmann back in about 2010, somewhere around there, and we really haven't seen it return to the range for a good number of years. So of course the locomotive is this, the beautiful S&DJR 7F. And as you can see, mine is in the BR Black livery, which is very smart, but alas, it is not my favourite of the Bachmann 7F liveries because they did once produce a Prussian blue pre-grouping S&DJR livery for this, which looks absolutely amazing. But alas, it's even more rare than the BR Black ones. I think it might have been part of the Bachmann Collectors Club, I'm not sure of that, so don't quote me on it, but that would certainly explain why they seem to be so rare. But still, the BR Black here is definitely better than nothing, and I hope you're going to enjoy having a close look at this thing today. It's a little bit hard to give you a price on such things because obviously these haven't been for sale recently, but the typical price back when I bought mine was £125 to £130, something like that. So by today's standards, it certainly doesn't seem unreasonable. But again, you can't really lean too heavily on that because if Bachmann were to bring this back, then I guess it would be quite a bit more expensive. But still, let's take a look at this loco, let's see if it's up to modern standards, and hopefully let's enjoy what is quite an unusual pre-grouping tender loco. Okay, here we go. Alright, so these models do still seem to be very popular among collectors. They seem to sell very well on the second-hand market still, which does make me wonder whether Bachmann might one day bring the 7F back into their range. It would be really great to see these come back, although something tells me if it came back at a modern Bachmann price, you know, 200 quid or something, then maybe it wouldn't go down that well, because from what I remember about these, lovely as they are a little bit dated in terms of their features and their mechanisms and such. So if this was to come back, I would definitely expect to see some serious upgrades, or to see it at like £120 or something, but knowing Bachmann, that's probably not going to happen. But anyway, enough speculation about the future. Let me show you the end of the box. So the product code I have is 31-013. It is a Class 7F number 53808, and this is in the BR Black Late Cress. Late cress, that's the worst kind of cress. They bring you a sandwich and then they bring the cress later on. No good at all. Oh yeah, and this has, sorry, I'm rambling on about cress. It has a 21-pin DCC socket inside. Right, let me show you the back of the box because here there is a brief history of the class in real life, so pause and read that if you'd like to. For now though, let's revisit the Bachmann 7F and see what this thing is like. All right. Yeah, it's really something, isn't it, this? Very unusual looking. It's a 280, I mean, it's got a massive wheel configuration on the base, but the top half, the boiler and firebox and such, just looks like a smaller loco. And in fact, these were built using the same boiler, I believe, as the Midland Compound, which was a 440 locomotive. Very interesting class. Anyway, so this just has some generic information, running in, cleaning and maintenance. Yeah, it's just the standard gubbins. I think the one we want is going to be this. Okay, yep, so this is more specific to the Fowler 7F. It's not 100% clear what these diagrams here refer to, but I'm guessing it's body removal for both the loco and the tender, I think. And yeah, there is some sort of reverser business going on with the loco that you have to take care of if you want to remove the body. And then this is just the standard information really, running in, curves, yeah, body removal, DCC, all that usual stuff. So yeah, it's relatively standard. And then on the back, yeah, this is the part I'm interested in. It is the exploded diagram, which shows, well, I mean, look, it shows what look like square bearings on the loco chassis. Can't remember whether the axles just run into those square slots or not. Again, we'll have to find out all this stuff because it's been a long time since I've looked at this. Standard Bachmann motor, I think these were just 3-pole if I remember correctly, so again, a bit outdated. But we will see in due course. But yeah, decent paperwork, shows you the basics. Right, let's take a look at this engine then. Let's remove the top of the box. And there's an accessories bag here of some sort. So let's have a quick look at that. So not too much to fit yourself, quite obviously. We've got a few pipes for the buffer beams and also some properly moving screw-link couplings. Again, fantastic feature. I've noticed recently Bachmann do seem to include these a lot more often than other manufacturers do. And the Bachmann ones are very rarely sort of static plastic moulded things either. They usually properly move. And a lot of modelers really like having those. Some even use them, I think, instead of NEM couplings. They must have some serious patience. Anyway, let's have a look at the loco. And first things first, yes, even though this is a plain black livery, Bachmann have still managed to get a really lovely finish on this. And that is something that Bachmann nearly always do. Yeah, looks really, really good, does that. Okay, let's lift this baby out. And, you know, I've already said that the top half of the engine seems quite small and slim, and yet it's still quite a heavy beastie. The boiler and the firebox and such, those are all plastic, I think, but the running plate is really quite chunky, and it is made of metal. It's all die cast. So the weight of the loco feels really good, to say that it's quite a nimble thing. But there we have it, the 7F. It really is a 280 of a different colour, even though it is just plain black. Anyway, here comes a little bit of background on these lovely locos in real life, and then we'll take a much closer look at the model and take in some of its details. So it's not 100% clear who designed the 7F. I think basically what happened is James Clayton designed them back in the sort of pre-grouping era, but then more were built by the LMS later on under Henry Fowler, so he sometimes gets credited with the design. But either way, James Clayton apparently originally designed these for the Somerset and Dorset Joint Railway. A pre-grouping locomotive, this class of 11 280s was introduced in 1914, with, as I say, later examples being constructed by the LMS in 1925. The 7F originally served a very specific purpose. It had to be easily able to haul coal trains on the heavily graded S&DJR, yet it couldn't be too heavy for the route. The 280 wheel configuration was therefore selected, and it was an exceptionally large and powerful locomotive for the time. The final design featured the same boiler as that of the Midland compound, 2 outside cylinders, Belpaire fireboxes and Walschaerts valve gear. The loco weight was only 65 tonnes, yet the tractive effort was in the region of 157 kilonewtons. Now compare this to Gresley's A1, which was much heavier at 92 tonnes, but with a tractive effort of only 132 kilonewtons. Really goes to show how remarkable the 7F was. The first built members of the class were gradually withdrawn between the late 1950s and the early 1960s, while the later 1925 engines survived a little bit longer until the mid-1960s. As of today, 9 of them have been scrapped and 2 remain under preservation. So there she is, the Bachmann 7F up close and personal for you. And the date inside the box said that this was manufactured in 2012, which makes this very model that you're seeing right now 10 years old this year. And really, considering how old this is, the level of detail and just the general way this thing looks is really, really very impressive. The weight of the model isn't as impressive as I thought. It came in at 297 grams, which is okay, I think. And it's certainly more than a Hornby Q6, but that's quite easy to beat because Hornby cheaped out on the Q6. It's the same weight as the Oxford N7 tank engine, which is obviously a tank engine. It doesn't have a tender. It's less than the Dapol Large Prairie, and it's less than an LMS compound from Bachmann. But it's not terrible. I think the weight is about okay. Besides that though, as I've already said, the finish is absolutely gorgeous. Look at the shine on the boiler there. Very, very good quality finish. The plain black is supplemented by these windows, which are a very distinguishing feature of the 7F. Lovely gold lining around those, or perhaps they're meant to look like brass frames or something. But that is a lovely, lovely effect on an otherwise very plain loco. And when I'm looking for the 7F, it's those windows that I look for. Other decoration is absolutely fine. You've got the 7F classification and the running number on the side of the cab. Absolutely no problem with that. Tiny little builder's plate just behind the cylinders here. Yeah, that's a nice little print. And a separately painted buffer beam, as you can see. And if you imagine the vacuum pipe and the screw link coupling fitted to that, it would look very nice and detailed indeed. Let's start talking about some of the detail then. So the model is complete with metal sprung buffers. It's a great feature. Separately fitted lamp brackets on the running plate, that all looks good. The smoke box door is nicely detailed and it's complete with a separately fitted handrail and also lamp brackets there too. The boiler and the firebox are fitted with the metal handrail, and there's also some quite complex pipe work going on there, which looks great. The cylinders have the drain cocks pre-fitted to them, as you can see, so they look nice and complete. And of course, given that the 7F has the Walschaerts valve gear, the linkage and connecting rods do look very, very complex on this model, which is really lovely to see. And this is the part of the valve gear that you have to be careful with when you remove the body. You've got to just make sure that disengages properly. The wheels are die-cast, which I think brings them a great finish, and the centres have been painted over so that the axles are not too conspicuous. That's good. One disappointing omission is the complete lack of detail between the frames. That is quite a visible area, unfortunately, and yet it is just noticeably very blank. The safety valves and the whistle are made of metal. It's a very funny shade on those, isn't it? Sort of like a grey metal effect, but the fact that those are made of metal does bring a bit more detail to those parts, and it also improves the finish quite a bit as well. And then the cab area is extremely well detailed. There's separately fitted handrails, there's a movable tender foreplate there, and also an incredible level of cab detail. You've got the brown painted floor, cream painting on the back wall and the roof, and an awful lot of controls, all fully detailed. There's separately fitted turning wheels there. You can clearly see the reverser wheel. The gauges and the water gauges have all been picked out. Nice looking regulator with two handles on it. Whew. It's really quite the cab. Again, we're seeing a lot of models from 10 years ago or more which have, in some cases, better cabs than newly tooled models. The cab is definitely my favourite aspect of this. Let's take a look at the tender. It's a relatively simple looking tender, but it's still a decent quality one. Decent moulded detail on the bodywork, lots of rivets, nice late British Railways crest on there as well, which has been well printed. The underframe has the brake rigging pre-fitted, as you can tell, so no issues at all with that. The coal load, I'm not sure whether this coal load is removable or not. It does seem to be fairly well stuck in there, but it's not too bad looking. Yeah, decent level of detail to it, bit of a gloss finish. Then you've got some painted controls at the front of the tender, including this brake handle. Around the back, you've got some printed details pertaining to the capacity of the tender, and there's some sort of running number up at the top there, I think. The rear buffer beam also has the sprung buffers and the lamp irons pre-fitted around it, although this one does have the vacuum pipe pre-fitted, and both the front and the back of the loco are pre-fitted with the NEM couplings. The front one is fixed to the front pony, so that gets a good degree of rotation. So yeah, it's a good looking model, isn't it? Very good quality, no parts dropping off it, even after 10 years in fact. Nice die-cast running plate, it makes the model feel quality as well. Yeah, it's really, really decent. My only wish is that I'd been able to get one in the S&DJR blue. I think that would make a good quality loco look even better. But as far as BR blacks go, I think this looks pretty fantastic. Now though, it's time to take a look at the mechanism, and we'll also take a look at the performance. I can't remember exactly what the mechanism and the performance were like. I seem to remember they were quite unremarkable, but we need to refresh ourselves on that. So I'll do that and get back to you. So there she is, the beautiful 7F down onto the track, and because I've had this model in my collection for a number of years and I've disassembled it many times for servicing and maintenance, I don't have to go through all of the rigmarole of testing the loco first, so we can go straight in and talk about the mechanism. And I'm going to be honest, in my opinion, I think the mechanism here is pretty horrendous. It's one of those where the model looks excellent on the outside, and Bachmann have clearly gone to town to make it look wonderful on the outside, but hiding inside there's a very, very poor quality mechanism indeed. Unfortunately, this is an attitude that Bachmann have more recently abandoned. Their new released locos are much better quality than this in terms of mechanism, and that just goes to show the importance of reviewers not just sucking up to Bachmann for sycophantic purposes. because it's not taken that long really for Bachmann to change their ways on mechanism. Okay, so we've got loco pickups. Yeah, that's a good sign. This loco does have tender pickups, but they're only on 2/3 of the wheels. The centre axle has no pickups at all, and those that do have pickups have those sort of weak pickups that go to the axles. And of course the front axle has all of the weird wires all around it, because the electrical connector for some reason is right in the middle of the tender. You've also got a very insecure drawbar. There's no screw which fixes the drawbar in place, so it's very easy for it to come loose. And then the loco and tender are just held together by the fragile wires, so not a great design there. The base keeper plate is removable. You do have to remove the brake rigging really to get access to the screws, but once you've gotten all of the screws out, the base keeper does come off, and it is spring loaded so that you can remove it fully and clean it and service it and whatnot. This does reveal that there are no proper bearings on the axles though, and even worse, if I pull one of them out for you, you can see that they sit into square slots in the chassis. And not even Bachmann's most fervent defenders have ever come up with a good excuse for this. And in fact, because this model has been run quite a bit, if we look up close at the bearings, you can see where the axles have actually worn into the chassis there. Because assuming the axle is a perfect cylinder, you've got an infinitely small point of contact between the axle and the chassis. And that seems to be a sort of design which will allow the loco to run well, but not last particularly long. Not a great attitude. The chassis, once the body has been removed, I would describe as a big mess. We've got a 3-pole motor here with no flywheel, multiple capacitors and resistors bodged all over the motor. Look at this solder joint here. Blimey, not at all the neat and tidy loco that we saw on the outside. And they've not even put a cover over the gears, so it's just cheap and nasty, bare minimum, not that great. The gauging though is okay at 14.3mm back to back quite reliably. So a pretty shoddy mechanism really by even the lowest of standards. However, I've taken really good care of this. Every so often this loco gets fully stripped down, cleaned, re-lubricated, and you'll be pleased to know that the performance is still really quite decent. So let me show you the way this loco runs. I will first do some higher speed running for you. So there we go, as you can see at the higher speeds, really nice and smooth. Yep, I'll do a 50% run past. So I think we can agree that's certainly not too fast for a heavy freight locomotive. Definitely seems to have been geared to favour the lower speeds, which is great. So now let's show you a crawl. I will start here and I'll ease it up gradually. And there we go. As you can see, when you consider the shoddy mechanism in this one, I think that's quite remarkable, really. So yes, they're just 3-pole motors without flywheels. But obviously I've gotten a good example here, one that does perform well. So yeah, no major complaint on the motor, because you can find good 3-pole motors, and I think this example is definitely one of those. Turn it up a little bit. It's actually less smooth at that sort of speed. Let's try that backwards. Alright, I'm off the controller now. So yeah, it's fluctuating a little bit, yeah, as you can see. Not touching it at this point, folks. Fingers are here, look. So yeah, it's not amazing, but I think when you consider the state of the mechanism, the performance itself is remarkably good. The pulling power is okay. It comes in at 0.34 newtons, which is enough for around 22 coaches on straight and level track. That is, however, quite a bit less than other 280 locos in the collection, including the 8F and the 2800 class from Hornby. Those are just a couple that I've recently reviewed. But yeah, it's not so bad. To be honest, I would expect a lot worse, so it's a pleasant surprise. In terms of a hauling test today though, I've set up quite a big rake really of open wagons to simulate a bit of a coal train. So let's go and see how the coupling gets on, and let's haul some wagons. Alright. Right, let's see how steadily I can do this coupling. Yeah, it's not brilliant at the low end, I have to say. There we are, I think we've done it there. Not brilliantly controllable, at least, but certainly at the sort of medium to low speeds, hauling a freight train, it certainly is good and smooth, and there seems to be a good deal of torque there, as you'll see when it goes round some of the curves. So yeah, performance-wise, it's a very, very pleasant surprise. So today's loco theme is 280 engines, so see which others you can spot, and if you see one that's not a 280, then comment down below and I'll pin the first correct answer for the odd one out. Slight malfunction with the wagons here. I'm supposed to have more than that. I think some have been left behind. Oh dear. Bear with me. There's the Hornby 8F, by the way, while I'm fixing this little cock up. Yep, nice loco that, and more powerful than the 7F, even though it has the plastic body and the flat plastic running plate. Anyway, I think we're ready to go. Okay, I'll speed that one up. And then on the inside line, I guess this is technically an odd one out, but this is not the odd one out. But it is another S&DJR locomotive, so I thought I'd run it just to show you what the Prussian blue looks like. But this is the Hornby 2P, the only S&DJR blue loco I've got. Right, let's keep an eye on this. Quite a lot of wagons here that it's hauling. I think there should be about 30, so that's no mean number of wagons. And as you can see, the slowdown around that second radius curve is minimal. I don't even know if I noticed any slowdown. Certainly no wheel slip. So the weight isn't that impressive and the pulling power isn't over the top, but as you can see, it's more than capable of hauling a decent rake. And it's not struggling with this lot, so I'm pretty sure you could add a fair number of extra wagons here and still not have a problem. So yeah, performance gets a thumbs up. And in fact, I guess the whole model can get a thumbs up, except for the mechanism, which obviously I don't condone, but at least it works well, I'll have to admit that. And the model certainly looks excellent. It's one of Bachmann's best looking models, and I don't often say that with a BR Black livery because it's quite difficult for a loco's character to shine through in a BR Black, but I think with this one it certainly does. So it's a very good job, very lovely loco. I'd love to see it updated and brought back to Bachmann's range. I would certainly buy one. Time for some ratings then for the very lovely, actually, still after all these years, Bachmann 7F. So the level of detail I've decided to give 4.5 star. Given that this has such a simple livery, the level of detail is honestly very impressive. We've got the sprung buffers, we've got the screw-link couplings, incredibly detailed cab interior, separately fitted metal parts including the safety valve and the whistles, fantastic valve gear, lovely finish. Yeah, it's really, really solid. I just wish there was a bit more detail between the frames because that would have really just elevated the model to an all new level. But overall, 4.5, it's a pretty good score. The performance, I think when you consider how shoddy the mechanism is, it really is a wonderful performer, again still after all of this time. Bear in mind obviously it's taken a lot of maintenance. I do service and clean this loco every year or two, so it's not as though it's running on dry bearings or anything, but yeah, strangely very, very good. Handles the track with decent torque, never derails, never causes any problems. It's not the greatest at the slow speed, but frankly I'm surprised it isn't a lot worse. So 4 star, very well deserved. The pulling power is okay, I would say. It's not bad, it's not great. 22 coaches or 0.34 newtons. Like I say, it's less than a Hornby 2800 class or a Hornby 8F. These are other 280 locos, but it is more than a Hornby 52XX tank engine, so I guess that's something. But as you can see, it's not having any problem hauling a decently long freight train, so again, no problem. The mechanism though is really what lets this loco down. The pickup situation's not great. Those tender pickups are not the most reliable in the world, and the whole sort of loco to tender drawbar setup is all a bit messy, isn't it? Loco, no proper bearings on the driving axles, and the axles themselves sit into square slots cut into the chassis. Laughably poor quality. 3-pole motor, no flywheel. Just the general poor quality of the mechanism really lets this one down. And that means that the quality score has to be 4 star. If this had a good quality mechanism to match the good quality exterior, then I could give this 5 star very easily because it's very well assembled, no visible glue, nice die-cast running plate. Generally, it's a good quality loco from the outside, but still a well-deserved 4 star, I think. Value for money then, now this one again you have to take with a pinch of salt because the price I'm quoting is not a current price. This is from a few years ago, 125 to 130 pounds. I think for this these days would be 4 star for me. I've given this much less in the past because obviously models used to be much better value than they are now. And it would have been 5 in fact had this got a decent quality mechanism, but come on, even today if you pay 125 quid, you want a model that's built to last and a model that's decent quality. But yeah, still decent value for what I paid. Overall then, that is 7.55 out of 10. I don't think that's too bad for a 10-year-old engine, to be honest with you. Let's stick that into the logbook then. And yeah, certainly not faring too badly. 16th place above the S&DJR Class 52 and below the Small Prairie. Still a decent loco if you can get hold of one for a good price. Well folks, I really hope you've enjoyed this video. Yet again, I think this loco was well worth revisiting. I certainly had forgotten, I think mainly how good it was in terms of its level of detail and the finesse of the bodywork and such. So yeah, that's been a real pleasure to rediscover today. And I hope you feel the same way. I hope you've enjoyed looking at this. If you've got any thoughts on the Bachmann 7F, please do comment them down below. I'd be very interested to hear what you think about this. But for now, thank you very much for watching. I will catch you soon for another review. Alright, you take care then. Cheers everybody.